Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm so glad you're joining us for this one.
Yeah, we've got a really great discussion lined up today.
We really do. So today we are looking at a pastoral devotional message, and it's tackling a pretty heavy topic, which is prosperity theology.
Right, which is basically the belief that, if your worship is faithful enough, it should naturally result in financial blessing.
Exactly. And our source material today is actually written by a Christian minister who is very critical of this idea. He argues that worship and material success, well, they actually belong in completely different domains.
Yeah, he's saying worship is purely relational with God, not a transaction.
Yeah.
And financial success, that comes from practical knowledge, hard work, and wisdom, like the kind you find in Proverbs.
Right. So our mission today is to impartially and respectfully explore his argument. We want to really understand his theological and practical viewpoints.
Okay, let's unpack this because I think this hits close to home for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. It's a very common struggle. Yeah, so let me ask you, the listener, have you ever felt a tension between your spiritual life and your career ambitions? Like, maybe you're sitting in the pew on a Sunday morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're singing this beautiful hymn of absolute devotion. The music is swelling. The lyrics are all about surrender. But in the back of your mind, you're quietly agonizing over your mortgage.
Yeah, it's that disconnect.
It is. Maybe your thoughts drift to a childhood friend, someone who hasn't stepped foot in a church in decades, but they just bought this massive house with a swimming pool and a luxury car.
And you're just sitting there feeling entirely financially ordinary or even struggling.
Exactly. And there is this quiet, lingering tension. You want to be this profoundly good, spiritually grounded person, but, you also really, really want that financial breakthrough.
Right. And that is exactly where the author starts. Before we get into the heavy theology, he wants to address that very relatable human feeling of envy.
Yeah, he doesn't sugarcoat it at all.
He really doesn't. He asks this blunt, almost jarring question right out of the gate. Do you want to be rich or do you want to be like Jesus?
Wow, yeah. It's a tough question to face.
It strips away that whole Sunday morning veneer. He points out the deep irony of singing a hymn with lyrics like, I want to be like you, Jesus, while secretly just coveting what your friend has.
Because the congregant is showing up, engaging in the rituals, but desperately hoping the pastor is going to preach a sermon that, magically unlocks a new tax bracket.
Yes. And the author is diagnosing a fundamental mismatch in expectations here. People are bringing a transactional mindset into a space that was designed for relationship and devotion.
So it makes me think of an analogy. It's like going to the gym, right?
Okay, yeah.
You get on the treadmill, you put in a grueling hour of intense cardio, which is great. But you're secretly hoping that the sweat you're dropping is somehow going to deposit money directly into your checking account.
Oh, I love that analogy. It's perfect.
Because you're doing a healthy thing, right? A necessary thing. But you are completely mixing up the spheres of life. You're asking the physical realm to do the heavy lifting for your financial ambitions. So what does this all mean for the person in the pew?
Well, it means they're setting themselves up for disappointment. When you go to work, you expect a paycheck because that's a transactional environment. But when you come to worship expecting a financial strategy seminar, you're misunderstanding what worship is actually for.
Right. Treating God like a cosmic vending machine.
Exactly. And it doesn't just result in bad theology. It creates this devastating cognitive dissonance when the machine doesn't dispense the wealth.
Yeah, I can see how that would lead to a crisis of faith. But if this transactional mindset is so fundamentally broken and it just leaves people disappointed, why does it persist? Like, why is prosperity theology such a massive global industry?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Right. And the author addresses this ecosystem directly. He doesn't just blame the people in the pews for having misguided expectations. He actually points a very critical finger at the pulpit.
Oh, interesting. So he's looking at the supply side.
Yes, using scripture to back it up. He references Paul's letters to Timothy, specifically talking about a congregation with itching ears.
Itching ears, right. The idea that people just want to hear myths that satisfy their own desires.
Precisely. And the psychology of those itching ears is what makes this dynamic so potent. Because, frankly, human beings are deeply susceptible to transactional theology. The alternative is, well, it's daunting.
How so?
Because the alternative means accepting that our financial struggles are maybe the result of our own lack of skill or poor planning or just the brutal reality of a tough economy.
Oh, I see. It's easier to blame a lack of faith than a lack of financial literacy.
Exactly. A theology that says, just have enough faith and you will be wealthy, offers this powerful psychological shortcut. They don't want sound teaching about discipline or hardship. They want a message that validates their desire for their friend's luxury car.
And on the flip side, you have preachers who recognize that desperate demand, and they are more than happy to supply the myths.
Right. The author points out that these specific teachers view godliness as a literal means of financial gain. They are providing these myths for profit.
But wait, I want to push back on this a little bit on behalf of the listener. Is the author saying it's inherently wrong for a minister to be financially supported? Or is it specifically the motive that he takes issue with?
That's a really important distinction, and he does address it. He notes that the Apostle Paul didn't reject the idea of ministers making a living entirely. The issue isn't the mere presence of money.
Okay, so what is the issue?
It's the internal posture toward it. Paul added this crucial condition to ministry and financial support, which is contentment.
Ah, contentment. So it's the difference between earning a living and actively pursuing wealth as your main goal.
Exactly. Once the pursuit of money becomes the motive, contentment becomes impossible. The goalpost is always moving. What's fascinating here is how the author describes this as a symbiotic, though completely misguided, relationship between speaker and audience.
A symbiotic relationship.
Yes. The preacher tells the myths to satisfy the congregation's desire for an easy fix. The congregation then rewards the preacher financially. The church might grow, the speaker gets popular, but the actual gospel is completely abandoned.
That is a harsh but really clarifying critique. But it also leads to a pretty jarring pivot in his devotional, because after spending all this time tearing down the pursuit of wealth and calling out these preachers, he asks a surprising question.
He asks if being rich is actually a bad thing.
Right, and you'd think, based on everything he just said, he'd be advocating for absolute poverty or some kind of monastic lifestyle.
But his answer is surprisingly blunt. He says, not bad at all. Being rich is good.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because he is remarkably pragmatic about this. He acknowledges that wealth is highly useful. It funds our lives, our families, even high-standard lifestyles.
Yeah, he even goes out of his way to say there's nothing wrong with branded luxury goods.
Yeah.
He leaves the boundary of that standard entirely up to personal judgment.
Which is so refreshing to hear. It's like he's separating the tool from the source. It reminds me of a hammer.
A hammer?
Yeah, think about it. A hammer is a fantastic tool. If you want to build a house, you absolutely need a hammer. There's zero virtue in trying to push nails into wood with your bare hands just to prove how humble you are.
Right, that would just be painful and ineffective.
Exactly, the hammer is good. But trying to use a prayer of devotion to magically summon a hammer out of thin air instead of just driving to the hardware store and buying one, that is where he draws the hard line.
That is a brilliant way to put it. He insists that worship means relating to God. It's devotion. It's a posture of the heart. He acknowledges the grace in worship, but warns against treating it like a contract.
Just because you sing the loudest on Sunday doesn't mean God owes you a promotion on Monday.
Right. The author explicitly writes that we shouldn't seek material wealth through worship. But, as you pointed out with the hammer, that leaves us with a practical void. If the spiritual treadmill doesn't pay out, where does he say wealth should come from?
Yeah, because we still need to pay rent.
We do. And this is where he pivots from the sanctuary to the classroom and the workplace. He grounds his argument entirely in the book of Proverbs.
Ah, the wisdom literature.
Yes. He cites verses about diligence, planning, avoiding debt, the reality that lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth.
It's the daily grind.
Exactly. He distills this theology of work into a mandate for practical knowledge. And he's not being metaphorical here. He means real-world requirements.
Yeah.
University degrees, specialized courses, vocational training.
He's telling them to prepare for the actual ruthless workforce. That is a brutal reality check to hear from a pulpit.
It really is. He warns that if you are of working age, you have to rapidly adapt to advances in knowledge. If you remain stagnant, if you refuse to learn new skills, you will be replaced by someone more advanced.
Because God isn't going to just update your resume for you or, magically download coding skills into your brain while you sleep.
As nice as that would be, no. The psychological link he's making between discipline and wealth is profound. He's demanding agency and dismantling that spiritualized passivity.
And I do have a question about this. This intensely practical upskill or get replaced advice feels very targeted at, say, a 30-something professional. What about the listener who is older? Someone who is past university age or even elderly?
He actually unpacks this for different stages of life with a lot of pastoral care, which I appreciated. For the working age, it's relentless adaptation. But for the elderly, he shifts the focus.
Oh, how so?
He says that if you are older but still possess physical strength, you shouldn't succumb to despair or feel useless. The mandate is to keep living with hope and doing the absolute best you can with the resources you currently have.
That's a very dignified view of human effort.
It is. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is firmly grounding financial success in the realities of hard work and continuous learning at every age, rather than mystical intervention.
But the strong division he's making worship over here in the relational category and practical work over there in the secular category, it brings up a massive structural question. Are our spiritual lives and our secular lives just completely divorced from one another?
That's the natural next question, right?
Yeah.
Are we supposed to be a purely spiritual being on Sunday and a ruthless capitalist on Monday?
Yeah, it feels like we're being asked to split ourselves in half, like two entirely different sets of rules.
And this is where the author brings his entire argument into a concluding synthesis, because he forcefully argues against separation. He advocates for deep integration.
Okay, how does that work if they are in different domains?
Well, he says worship cannot replace practical knowledge. You can't pray your way into passing a medical board exam. But conversely, practical knowledge cannot replace worship. No amount of stock portfolio growth will satisfy the spiritual longing of the human soul.
They belong to different realms, but they affect each other. It reminds me of the relationship between breathing and eating.
Breathing and eating.
Yeah, both of those systems are absolutely required to keep you alive, right? And they both nourish the exact same body.
Right, definitely.
But taking a really deep breath doesn't exempt you from needing to eat lunch. And eating a massive meal doesn't mean you can just stop breathing. They are distinct, non-interchangeable systems, but they are completely integrated in sustaining the person.
That's a fantastic analogy. They are two sides of the same coin. And to tie that integration together theologically, the author highlights Jesus' words in John 10:10b. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly.
Abundant life. Now, that is a phrase that prosperity theology has historically hijacked, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's usually used to mean a life overflowing with material wealth and perfect health. But the author is completely reclaiming that definition here.
How does he define it?
He explains that true abundant life means Christ is working dynamically within the person, giving them both the desire and the ability to do what pleases him across all domains of life.
Oh, I see. So the spiritual source animates the person in the sanctuary and in the workplace.
Exactly. The devotion shapes the character of the person, and then that shaped character applies hard-earned practical knowledge to their daily work. Both originate from Christ, but they are honored for their distinct functions.
It's a beautiful, holistic picture of a human being. So to summarize this for you, the listener, the core takeaway here is a call for a massive paradigm shift. The author is urging us to step off that spiritual treadmill.
Yes, move away from viewing worship as a financial transaction.
Right. And instead embrace a balanced life where spiritual devotion and practical hard work are honored in their respective but connected spheres. And honestly, when you really internalize that, it is incredibly liberating.
It really is. It relieves this immense pressure.
Because if you believe your wealth is directly tied to your faith, then a bad month at work isn't just an economic hardship. It's a full-blown spiritual crisis. You start wondering, is God mad at me? Was my faith too weak?
It's a crushing anxiety. And this perspective removes that from the sanctuary. It allows worship to just be worship, a relationship, and it places the responsibility for our economic reality back on our own shoulders in the workplace.
Which is empowering rather than condemning. It just lets work be work.
It does. This raises an important question, though, and it's something I think is fascinating to mull over.
Oh, okay. What is it?
Well, if we take this author's advice and we completely remove the metric of financial or material success from our spiritual expectations, what happens to our modern definition of abundance?
Wow. That is a heavy pivot.
Think about our culture. We are obsessively focused on measurable success. We quantify everything. Followers, dollars, profit margins, square footage.
We really do. If it can't go in a spreadsheet, we don't know what to do with it.
Right. So if we strip all of those quantifiable metrics away from our spiritual lives, does our deep obsession with measuring things fundamentally limit our ability to even understand an abundant life.
That is such a good point. Like, what does true abundance actually look like when it's purely relational, entirely unquantifiable, and absolutely cannot be deposited in a bank?
Exactly. Are we even equipped to value that anymore?
That is a fascinating thread to pull on, and it is the perfect place to leave it for today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We always love exploring these layered, complex topics with you. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next one.